Okay, we are back. Second time guest, Amy. You're back.
I'm back. I couldn't stay away.
You couldn't stay away. I know you wanted to come back on the show and
Sure.
chat.
Yes, I love to chat, and our conversation was so interesting last time,
I think
Dr.
so.
Darian.
You know what? I remember this is crazy. We were talking about how amazing PBS was. I remember. You still
Yes,
feel the same way?
I do. In fact, I just watched the Rita Moreno PBS documentary last week. It was awesome.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's really cool.
Yeah, and then the Raul Julia. I've seen that before. I saw that again. It's worth watching for sure. Because Rita Moreno, who she was awesome, but all the struggles through her life as an artist and her personal struggles just brings to light that we are all in the same boat, no matter we're all on the same ride,
Yes.
uh experiencing our own traumas or our own successes or our own feelings of inadequacy at times,
Yes.
even through success.
Even through success, for sure. So
Mhm.
to give you a little bit of background too, is so about a half an hour before you came on, I was giving a little talk here
Mhm.
on the app as well. And so it's called the cost of stagnation in your behavior. And I feel it
Mm.
was appropriate, especially since you help people become unstuck. And so I want to talk a little. We didn't really dive into this too much last time you and I talked, but I want to dive into it this time about your relationship with this term, getting unstuck and working with people.
Thank you. Yeah, so I'm Amy Shade. I am a women's empowerment coach. And what happened was I looked, I actually do the unstoppable you and get people unstuck. And what happened is, as I looked over my life, I was like, what's the one constant thing that has been ongoing through my life? I'm going to speak a little bit about how that worked out during COVID. It's like I never stay stuck. I have always been moving forward because of there's different reasons why. We'll go into that in a minute, but um, I think as an artist and a creative, for us, like as a child, I was suppressed. Like, you're not supposed to be an artist, you're not supposed to be a creative, which allowed me to get this fighting spirit of who I truly was. And that fighting spirit that I had to have growing up really maintained who I am today. It's an ongoing thing of, you're going to tell me no. Well, I'm going to say there's got to be a way.
Yeah.
There's something that is available to me because I do not, as an individual and an artist, want to be suppressed. So, like when COVID hit, right? I was sitting here alone. I'm single. I'm by myself. And I'm like, whoa, we're all stuck. It's a whole world
Right.
stuckness.
Right.
But what can I do to unstick? What can I do to bring people together? What can I do to help others really join in this global experience? We're in a global experience. We still are, but
Right.
the shock, right? In the beginning, we were in a
Yes.
huge global experience. How can I begin to bring us together and get unstuck together? So I
Right.
created my live streams, my 12 live streams that I did to bring experts into people's living rooms.
Beautiful. That is amazing. That's really good. So what was the feedback from this? What did you experience while doing these live streams that really spoke to you?
Well, first and foremost, our community, people like you and I, and expert, we are so willing to show up on platforms like this
Yes.
and to give our experience. And for the listeners out there, I would survey my list every live would have a survey, and it is about really feeling alone, isolated, having these judgments of self, and the stories that we tell ourselves about ourselves is what keeps us stuck.
Right.
That was really relevant. Like, I need more confidence. I'm not, my partner needs to change. I need, it's like this low self-esteem, a lot of trauma out there, which needs to be respected and understood and heard. But the story we tell ourselves about why we can't have what we want or desire is really strong. So that's what I found. I found there's beauty in every situation if you decide to make it that. Like, I had the story, I'm here by myself, I'm alone, but that story wasn't really true. The story,
Yeah.
that's not really true, because I got out of that story and began to really reach out to people that I knew, experts, and how can we create this platform and how can we bring people together. So yeah, I found out there's a lot of pain out there, more than, we've all had our own thing, but there's a lot of pain that my audience is mostly women, but
Yep.
men and women. And that a lot of us are trapped by our own stories, how we speak about it.
Now, where do you, in your assessment or your observation of this,
Mhm.
let's talk about the origin of being stuck or or person's pain. Where have you seen how do people start creating this narrative to go backwards where they start telling these stories? What's the origin of beginning to start these stories that you've seen?
Yeah. So a lot of the origin is an actual like strong trauma. It is like, it happens young or whenever it happens, it's there. But really when it happens when it's young is when it's really starts becoming enrooted in you.
Right.
And then you have the smaller traumas, which is like the suppression of who you are, which is still a big trauma when you're trying to live out your best life. And people are telling you, don't do it. You're not good enough. You're not pretty enough. You're fat. You're suck. Da da da. Like all these negative ideas. And in my thought is that they just start sticking to you.
Mm.
Right. And you come out this beautiful child, this pure person of who you are, your potential, and then people start putting their crap on you, their fears. And then what happens is we identify as ourselves as that's who we are.
Yeah. And you know what's interesting? I've heard this phrase kind of if you tell a lie enough times about yourself, you'll start believing it. You have to challenge the things about yourself that aren't true, or else you just assimilate them into your lives as the truth, that this is who you are.
Yes. And I do a lot of work about storytelling and stories. And one of the things that make stories stick to you, like, is certainty.
Talk more about that certainty.
Certainty. I'm 100% sure that I'm right. I'm 100% sure that he meant to hurt me. I'm 100% sure that I'm not capable. Certainty is one of the worst things you can have in your life. And people get upset with me because I'm like, well, maybe. I'm always that.
You're the other, well, maybe.
I'm like, well, let's really examine this, because when you're 100% certain about something, there's no more conversation.
Right.
There's no more possibilities. And when you're 100% sure about a story that you're telling yourself, then you are becoming a hostage to that story.
Right.
Because stories are not you. They are not the essence of who you are. Like, we attach our identity, like, I'm a dancer, I'm a creator. Like, I used to attach, I'm a dancer, therefore this is how I think, this is what I do.
Yes.
The idea is to take that story of being a dancer and take it away from me. Because that's not who I am. Yeah.
We do that in a lot of areas. And one area I always see, like in health and wellness, is when people take, like, let's say, their approach to how they eat food. They say, I'm a vegan or I'm a vegetarian. And then often that's the identification of self, is that main thing. And everything revolves around the center of that universe for it. When that's not who you actually are, you know.
Yeah, and I think, well, I grew up I have, many stories about being in a family of certainty,
Yeah.
like uh, atheist certainty, 100%.
Mm,
And as a creative, growing up was hard, but I believe that's true because we would have conversations about the certainty of people having to eat, do this, that. I'm like, I don't want any part of this conversation. I think those types of conversations keep you from actually having connected relationships
right.
because you're putting a story in front of an experience. You're putting limitation in front of something, of having like a human to human experience.
Right. The certainty is an interesting aspect of the whole thing. I never thought about that way. It's like, okay, not having that ambiguity creates a comfort for people, almost even when it's negative. Sometimes it's like, well, at least I know where I stand, you know?
Yeah, I know where I stand. It's like, yeah, I think that is one of the, what's happening in our country today also is this 100% certainty that you need to do this, 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 this. And if you don't do that, then you're a bad person or you don't care or
Right.
it's, yeah, I just had a conversation with someone at a party last week and I was like, your certainty is actually turning people off.
Really? What was, well, without getting, I mean, you can tell as much as you want, but what was it like? They were just so like so certain about believing in certain things or
Yes,
way to behave.
yes, and the judgment is there,
The
and then
judgment. Yeah.
the judgment about me,
Oh,
because I'm not going to go into her certainty. I'm going to be like, well, and all of a sudden I'm living in a bubble,
oh,
right? You know what I mean? It's like
yeah. Yeah. It's weird.
it's
Like,
but
wait a minute.
I'm actually just opening up possibilities
Yeah.
that might not be true, so that you can actually release yourself from the pain. Because
Yeah.
I'm not in pain, you're in pain. Do you know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
it is a painful place to be in that certainty. It,
Yeah.
and the certainty in that story often comes from a trauma that's inside of you that you are like, that's your whole story. So you're certain about,
Yeah.
and every time you're like reinforcing something, it is giving you safety about that fear you have in that pain.
Yeah. You know what's interesting? I always keep thinking, you're telling me this. I had a guest on, her name was Janelle Hardy. She's awesome. And
Mm-hmm.
her whole thing is like studying the myths of it's basically myth making, that humans are amazing at creating these myths about ourselves. These
Yes,
stories that actually have nothing to do with who you actually are, but you've created this myth, you know?
that's what it is.
Yeah.
Like many of us have myths and stories about our childhood and our parents.
Right.
And you have, for someone to like really be free, and I believe unstoppable and like get unstuck, you need to start poking holes in those stories
Mm.
and giving empathy to your parents. If you
Let's
can give
talk
it,
about that.
yes, yes,
Empathy to your parent. Okay, so this is very touchy for a lot of
yes,
people. Well, we need
yes.
to run towards this.
We need to run
We
towards
need to
it.
run towards it. So explain that further.
Well, we all have our own limitations, right? And I do believe that, and I don't know what your age range of your listeners are, but what was available to my parents, I just turned 53 yesterday.
Whoop whoop. Nice. Happy birthday.
So thank you. So my parents are in their 80s and they didn't have the resources that parents have today, right? Of
Correct.
of really if they wanted to, really working on themselves and leveling up in their, able to connect and be, we're
Yeah.
living in a different time.
Completely different.
Even that recognition is giving some empathy to the people that might have hurt us.
Yes.
And that is like, oh yeah, okay, like what do you expect? What do you really expect from I call it radical acceptance, when you accept, when you want something other than what is actually happening, is really unhealthy. So, and shall I use my own? I have to use my own story. In my
Please
own
do.
story.
We're running towards this. This is all open.
Okay.
We gotta
In my own
do this,
story,
Amy.
in
Yeah.
my own story, my dad, aerospace engineer. I'm over here, total like,
Yeah.
freedom,
Artist.
artistry,
Yeah.
curious, loud, right? Voice, and
Yes.
he suppress. He doesn't like that. Can't do that. That's not what you do. Withdraw. No more connection with me. There's no conversation, nothing. My whole childhood. But the fact of the matter is that in his own childhood, my grandfather, his father, ridiculed him because he was not physical. He was not athletic. He was not boisterous and open like my grandfather was, like big German dude,
Right.
So he has those pains of being rejected for not being accepted for who he was, which is smart, intelligent, quirky, very, my God, like meant,
Yeah.
Do you know engineers?
I do. I've interviewed many of them, so I know kind of the general aspect of it.
Yeah, so they're a different, they're a different type of person.
Yeah, of course.
And then the trauma of having that rejection, and then all of a sudden you have a daughter who's exactly in front of you, the person that you were ridiculed for not being. The pain that he felt, the fear he felt. Like when you start empathizing with their experience of what they grew up with and what they were rejected for, I'm like, I am like rubbing him the wrong way and bringing up all those old pains,
right,
of who he was not. So that created a lot of empathy for me. I'm like, okay, okay, what do you expect from someone who had, he's 88 now, I think 89.
Yeah.
We're lucky. That's what I look at it. I'm lucky that I grew up in an era of change and growth and coaching and,
Yeah.
help. I'm very lucky. We are all very blessed to be raised in this time.
Think about how different this time is from the previous times. Somebody who grew up in the 1950s, 60s, even 70s or so, and maybe after that, didn't have the wherewithal and the resources that we currently have today, like at all. Like
at all.
Very like maybe someone was slightly enlightened about it, but they were like so far on the fringe of society about it that the masses were like, no.
Yeah, well, I grew up in San Diego, California, so by the beach, so we were pretty hippie-ish.
Yeah,
we were
right.
out there.
It was so like
that was like the 70s. That was
right.
The 70s.
And something so fringe, and it may be good, and people just haven't come to that time where they accept that we need to talk about this, and this needs to be a national conversation.
Yeah, and I'm going to bring it back. I think that's a huge step into really releasing people and yourself from these stories, is certainty.
Yeah.
It's like really questioning and really like, okay, let's get real. Like, because we are humans and we are subject to the human condition, and you can't escape it. And, luckily we have more resources now to help us through that. But for my parents, there was no resources. And, or if you're even in this time, there's no resources, you can start empathizing, like, well, what was their childhood like?
Yeah.
What happened to them? And to really, when you start, chipping away at this certainty, it really frees you up for love and forgiveness. And me and my father to this day, we don't connect on a lot of things.
Okay.
Okay. But I don't have to connect with him on a lot of things
That's true.
because I know his limitations of who he is. And I respect who he is. And if I ask him to give me something more, it's actually, he's incapable.
Mm.
And I accept that.
You accept it. Yeah.
I'm okay with that because I understand who he is, I mean, like if you talk about, I don't want to talk about emotional intelligence necessarily, but in affection and conversation and in connection, he's just not that type of person.
Right. Right. And you've accepted that about him.
Yes, of course.
Yeah.
We talk about football, computers,
Yeah.
cooking, we talk about things that are like
I think a lot of people do that with their parents. They connect on a few things that are kind of like within each other's wheelhouse. And they kind of go with that and don't often veer too far outside of those lanes,
And I think that's okay if it's like there's no room to go anywhere else. That's fine. I think that's fine. If there is like, you get real with your parent and they want to go on this ride with you and like really work together on this, then yeah, there's room for growth.
Yeah.
But when someone is like 100% fine with all the decisions and what they do and who they are, then you got to respect that.
Yeah. So I'm sure the parents come up a lot. What other relationships or what other circumstances do you find when you are helping people become unstuck? What are some other examples, essentially?
Yeah. So in marriages.
Right. What's the common cause there? Stagnation? What's the common stuck or stagnation there, or the story that is happening that you've seen in that?
Yeah. What keeps women stuck? I could speak only for women.
Okay. Let's run towards it.
Is that we are not embracing our feminine communication and power. And oftentimes, we think that saying it curtly or in a mean way or in a direct way is the best way to get a man to do something, because we weren't taught how powerful our voice is when we actually use it in our own feminine way and not in a masculine way.
So explain the feminine way. I'd like to have somewhat of an operational definition, somewhat, about this.
Yeah. So the feminine way is more like creating like a win-win for both parties is a great way to think of being a feminine way. So, when you ask for something, you ask for it if you want your husband or your partner to do something, right? You find it to do it in a way that's like loving and open. So your communication is like, would be, you could say something nice beforehand. Don't do this all the time, but you could say, don't do this all the time, but men love compliments of many a times. And you can just say, hey, thank you for taking care of that, door handle last week. It would be really great if you could help me with this. Or you could say, do you have time in your schedule to help me, with the garage? And if so, like what day works for you?
Yep.
Instead of like, I need you to, and this is like, yep. And I think men, because in general, men do like to help. And I think that this is what I don't understand is like, and I get this from people too. They think that being mean or like saying a certain is gonna like motivate people.
No.
There's no motivation.
No.
In degradation, in judgment. There is no motivation. No. There is no like, inspiring. Oh man, like if I do this, then we get to go out and have dinner or something. There's
No.
no like enticement. There's no enticement for me to show up beautifully when I am being subjected to negativity.
Yes.
It doesn't work that way.
It doesn't. And let me pause for a second. So I talked about this yesterday on one of these talks. Is like, a great way to create defensiveness is to go on offense against someone.
Mm-hmm.
Is you want people to be defensive, be offensive to them. Be mean, be negative, and then they will start building bricks really high to keep you away from them. And same thing, you will not motivate them to change a behavior by being negative towards them for that. So so my wife is excellent at what you just said in terms of like, hey, you're doing this awesome. How about we do this also? Like she's mastered it, like
Yeah.
mastered it.
Yes.
And I'm always like, yeah, of course, like if you call somebody an asshole, do you think it's going to motivate them to want to help you? Like, no.
No, it's not. It's not. And I have been, I've participated in that.
You've participated in. You've been a participant, Amy.
Yes, I have been a participant, and oftentimes, and oftentimes we like to do it in front of other people too. That is a big no-no.
Big no-no.
Big no-no, because if we look, the only way to receive love is to give love, and that is just it.
Yeah.
The only way to receive what you truly desire is to ask for it in a way that's pleasant and beautiful and like, grounded.
Yeah.
And then I say, if that can't happen, then find a way to do it differently.
Yeah.
Find a different way so that you get what you want in the relationship.
Yeah.
That will keep you unstuck.
Yeah. It's so interesting. Like, and I've lived in so many different parts of the country. And, certain regions have certain kind of like calling cards, right? So on the West Coast, supposedly people are more chill, more relaxed. The East Coast people are more uptight. It's a rat race, Southern hospitality, whatever it is, type of thing. These stories about it. Whenever I see somebody who's like really angry and confrontational towards people, I see somebody who's very hurt.
Painful,
the pain is so deep, and they feel like I have to try to control this by being angry. I could control this person. I'm going to be angry and I'm going to make them do these things. And when has that ever worked? I mean,
it doesn't work. And I will have to say the West Coast this is a lot of work. I've done a lot of work.
I've done a lot of work on the West Coast too. I mean,
like I used to be that masculine person, that woman. I used to be that.
Yeah.
That's painful for me. I had to give that up. The perfection. Had to give it up. Too painful for me.
Yeah.
It started affecting me like physically, in a physical pain.
Yes.
Of having walk away from I'd feel good in the situation, then I walk away from the situation feeling bad, like physically bad.
Right.
So if you are walking from a situation feeling physically bad, like sick to your stomach, or like, oh, that my heart hurts from that experience, you need to start re-examining. We all need to start re-examining how we're operating in this world, because really you're hurting yourself. You're not really hurting anyone else.
Right.
You're really doing a lot of damage to your core person, the beautiful core person that you are.
Most definitely.
And when you start, this is like radical acceptance is also about like getting unstuck is about assessing, like, how am I actually feeling when I walk away from that conversation?
Yeah.
If I'm not feeling good, how can I start reframing the way I speak, reframing the way I do things, so that when I walk away feeling in integrity, and I walk away feeling, like, okay, I said my piece. It lands where it lands.
Right. So
But
you're doing something that's very different than what humans are taught to do. This self-evaluation is highly irregular for humans on a regular basis. To say, let's say I have a conversation with you, Amy, and it's not pleasant. And just walk away and go, what was my role in that?
But
That's hard for people to do, to turn it around and go, I contributed to that pain. That's hard for people to do.
Well, let's try to make it less hard.
All right, let's talk about that.
Let's try to make it less hard, because maybe that's the story you're saying, that it's hard. I mean, even if you say to yourself, today, I'm going to just kind of question all experiences I have today. You can even just say that, like, start experimenting. How am I feeling after that conversation? Just start assessing. You don't have to do anything about it. I think we're all trying to, like, get
You don't have to do anything about it. That's the key phrase there. Just start assessing it. Think about it. Practice it.
I'm a dancer. I mastered something. I mastered something because of practice.
Yes.
Commitment, resilience, practice. It's kind of thing. And it doesn't have to be hard. I think you can, if you got curiosity as one of your values, just be more curious about it. And you don't have to win. You don't have to be right.
Oh, you're gonna hit some people hard on that one.
You don't have to, but you don't. And this is it. We're all trying to be right, and we're all trying to fight, and we're all just getting hurt.
Yeah.
And it's gonna come out in one way or another. And I do believe in free will. I do believe that, Dr. Darian, you are a capable human being. I do believe in you.
Thank you.
I do believe in humanity. I do believe in the person that's in front of me. I believe in them. I don't need to put my stuff on them.
Yeah.
I believe they're very capable of who they want to be and who they are. Whatever that is, I believe in them.
Yeah. I love that. This whole assessment aspect, I think I was talking about this before you got on, of the evaluation of the self, and that we just don't spend enough time evaluating our own behavior and how our behavior is contributing to our own stagnation or our own feeling of being stuck. It's always someone else's reason why we're stuck, but we never go back to, maybe I am the main friction point of myself being stuck.
Yeah, one thing you can do to get unstuck is go back to a situation you have shame about.
Okay.
All of us can think of something and, like,
yeah.
It's like,
oh no, I have to think about this.
but the exercise is to rewrite that, reframe it and rewrite it. Like, if I could do it differently, what would I do? And who would I be in that situation if I could do it differently? Okay. That's when you start getting yourself out of this reality perception and go into the possibility. And when you go into possibility of, like, well, I'm going to rewrite it where I got to actually keep quiet and just listen.
Yeah.
And be able to just be there for that person and not try to tell them who they're supposed to be.
Right.
Maybe that's the regret.
Yeah.
And which causes a confrontation. So when you go back and you could rewrite it, you know what? Actually, what happened was I stayed quiet and I listened and I empathized.
Yeah.
Now, just writing that different option gives you the possibility. So when another situation comes up, you can say, I'm going to be quiet. I'm just going to empathize. And I'm just going to, you can start making different choices when you desire it also. And you become aware that you don't have to be a certain way all the time.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. And actually, let me reframe or just add something to what you said. So I think how you're saying it is very relevant for how I think it's very digestible. So I'm going to say from kind of your basic psychological standpoint, it's a sense of concrete operations versus formal operations. The person who says, I tried to look back at this and it didn't happen. I didn't act that way, so I can't think about it that way. Or the person who says, well, what if I did act differently? How would the outcome be different? If I would have been more open and receptive. And I think a lot of people act in the very concrete, formal operations way. Hey, this happened. It is what it is. You ever hear that? It is what it is. No, it is what it is. But what if something different could have occurred? And that's the evaluation. And I think it goes that evaluation is often not done for people. They go, "What happened? It's over."
Yeah.
You know.
And I will have to say something you said, like a different outcome. I don't focus on the outcome. I focus on who you get to be.
Yeah.
Like, how could you be better?
Yeah.
Not for a different outcome, because you could still be better of who you really want to be, and you're going to still have the same outcome on some level. But it's like you're more in integrity of who you are and what you represent and who you want to show up as. I mean, I want to show up as, a loving, open person.
Yeah.
Like that is that I've worked hard to become this.
But that's the crux of it is how many people are saying, how am I going to show up when I show up to this place or when I talk to this person? A lot of times it's an emotional wrecking ball going into stuff,
Yes, but I would say to you to start practicing.
Right.
Creating a vision of what you desire the outcome to be, or what you desire, how it's supposed to go.
Let's get some tangible things for people that they can do. The audience say, okay, I want to stop showing up like a major asshole to all these conversations. I want to stop showing up as a defensive person that people tell him I am. Tell me some strategies I can do. I can start practicing on to be better.
Yeah. So first I would ask you, who do you want to show up as?
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to show up as, a person who's really good at negotiations? Do you want to show up as a person who is good at relationships in that conversation? Do you want to show up open? How do you want to be in that moment? Okay. Do you want to be confident? Do you want to be, really express in a clean, clear, direct way that's not being an asshole?
Right.
Like, who do you want to be? That's the first question. Again, you have to go to the vision. Who do you want to be? And then oftentimes you can write out different scenarios. For instance, I have a client who last year was like really upset about Thanksgiving because it's so hard. I'm like, well, listen, let's write out the perfect Thanksgiving. How are you going to be this year?
Right.
Right? When you know all the arguments,
you know
what's coming, right?
You know what's coming, baby.
So you get to rewrite. You get to write a new empowered holiday. You get to I should say, a business meeting, like who you want to be.
Yeah.
You get to set it up. Okay, when this question is going to come up, who am I going to be? I'm going to be calm.
You know what's coming up.
It's coming.
You know what's coming.
I'm going to be calm. I'm going to just, oftentimes you just look at your relative and you smile and say, hope you're having a great day. And or you say like, oh, they need me in the kitchen. I do not need to, I don't have this huge need, nor do I think any of us should have a huge need to answer a question just because someone asked it. Mm-hmm. Really tell my views and what I truly believe. I don't believe that I have a huge need for that. And I don't have a huge need for like being accepted around people. Like that's not a big need for me. But I do know that I'm not going to walk into a room full of sharks and expect anything other than the sharks. The sharks are going to be there.
Yes.
So I need to understand that that's who's in front of me, and I get to take care of me.
Yeah. Yeah. And the stuck feeling is wishing for a different environment, even though you know it's not going to be that environment, without working on your own, basically work towards it. It's like, okay, I'm not going to change this environment. They're going to ask, Thanksgiving's coming, baby. It's going to be the same questions. What's the variable that I could change? Oh, me. I could change how I interact in that environment. But, grandma's going to keep asking the same questions, man. Like,
She is. And you know what happens when you actually change that, rewrite that story? It creates more connection.
yeah.
Because as soon as someone comes at me with something, I just go right to something that they truly care about.
Yes.
Oh, how's your daughter doing? I
Yeah.
go straight to the positive. I
Yeah.
don't go to the negative. I don't need to be validated and my voice to be heard. I don't need it. I would rather go for the relationship as the higher choice and ask them about the things that are important to them.
Yep. I love that. I would love to go for the relationship as the higher choice.
Yep.
I love that. Versus the bickering and getting into the same argument over and over again, every year, every week, whatever it may be.
Yeah, I always choose the relationship above, and the human being above anything else, because I understand everything else is just a story.
Yeah.
But who's in front of me, there's a core human there that is without hurt, politics, whatever, stories, whatever this is, jobs, incomes, all that is just a bunch of stories stuck on this beautiful human being in front of me. And how can I connect to that human to human?
So you guys know Uncle Steve's going to be at Thanksgiving this year. And he may annoy the hell out of you with the same stuff. You know what? Uncle Steve's a person. He's going to do him. But we're going to talk. We're going to approach Uncle Steve in a different way this year from our own.
It's for your own peace of mind. Like,
right.
This is the thing. This is all about me. That's it. Like, it's all about me and how can I create as much peace in my life as possible, because peace is huge for me. And how can I make it, this experience of living, an enjoyable experience that is about connection and not about these things that I cannot change.
Yep.
These fights, these beliefs people have. I'm just not, I just find that I just want you to know this is, the focus is always on me on some level.
Yeah.
I'm being very honest about that.
Yeah. No, and you know what? And I know that this is great because we are coming up during holiday season, which is very stressful for a lot of people. And listen, you may say, man, I got people in my family who have crazy conspiratorial thinking. They want to tell me about all this stuff. Like, listen, you can't get into that with them. You can't get your sword out and they got their sword out and you go, oh, you're crazy, blah, blah, blah. You have to practice ahead of time. You have to practice ahead of time how you're going to show up in that meeting with that person.
And it's not easy.
Correct.
I have that in my family.
Yes.
I have, so it's not an easy thing.
Yeah.
But, I just, as I say, you don't have to justify your person of being or who you are. You can just be.
Yeah.
You can just say, oh, interesting. I gotta go. Mom needs me in the kitchen.
I gotta go get something else here. Oh, okay. Yeah. You know what? I forgot something outside.
Or like you're on the phone. Oh, someone's at my door. I gotta go.
I gotta go, man.
It's so clean. and easy to do.
Right. They start doing that deflect. Oh, what about this other business thing you were telling me about the other day?
That's right.
Let's not get into.
How those chargers doing?
Yeah, well, it's like, but you start going into that den of
Don't go
massive
there.
controversy, and then the anger rises, and all of a sudden you're not the person you want to show up as.
And I do want to say that it is shocking. Like there has been in my own life, and this is where radical acceptance really works, is that, I had to mourn that person who became a conspiracy theorist.
Yeah.
And understand that she is not who was in front of me, 10 years ago, 15 years ago.
Yeah.
She's a different person. And I have to know that's who she is now and mourn who she used to be, because she's not that person anymore. Yeah. And it is very hard. It is very hard. But if you could do that, then, because oftentimes you want them to be who they used to be.
Yes.
They want that no longer exists. And that's where radical acceptance works here. It's no longer what's in front of you today. Yeah. And what's in front of you today is the reality of right now.
Yeah. It's almost kind of like too, when, people long or pine for being back home, and they have this nostalgia about home. So they try to recreate home all the time, and realizing that time has passed and home will never be what it was. Like this specific time that you loved so much,
Yes. And it's robbing you of your now.
Yes.
And your now is like now. It's like
your now is now.
Now. It's like, no, I just want to say like
profound.
It is now. It is profound.
It's now.
It's powerful. And it's like, if you can accept that, then you really start to live in such a beautiful way, because you're like, for me, I lost my fiance to cancer. So I understand now, like I understand now.
You understand now. Yes.
Yeah. That's all we have is right now.
How did that change you?
Oh, so many ways. First, because it happened so quick, he passed away within 6 weeks of knowing.
Oh my goodness.
There's no processing or anything like that. So, and he didn't want to go to the hospital. So I was the hospice, like me, we had in hospice come in, but basically I was part of the hospice too. So that really put me into PTSD. For about 3.5 years, I was really, couldn't hardly leave my house. It was very shocked. I was like in shock. Yeah. PTSD. And so what happened was, when that happened, it really made me question everything, who I was. I realized that the pain, I still had a lot of pain. I did not have self-confidence. I thought I was confident, but I was not. Right. I thought I loved myself, but I didn't. I thought, like, there were many things that I thought I was. And then when that happened, it just shook everything. Basically, like, all the trust I had was gone. So I had to rebuild that trust. I had to rebuild trust with life. I had to rebuild trust with me. Like I had to, my camera keeps going off. And I had to gain confidence. And so that was profound. And, when you realize just how precious life is, and many people with this certainty, they think they do things a certain way. They're going to have a certain type of life. Not true.
You're like, newsflash.
You could do everything right and still die of cancer.
Right.
Like, you could do everything right and still lose your job. Like, this idea that, there's some kind of guarantee if you do things right. Yeah. Is when something like that happens to you, you realize that's not true.
Yeah.
That is so not true.
Yeah.
That is so not true. And that gives you more more freedom, because I don't have to be right. I don't have to do everything perfect. I can
Yeah.
actually go outside my comfort zone and try something new,
Yeah.
which then is I started my business. I went back to school, got my degree. I went back to school at 43, got my degree at 46. And then from there, I started my coaching business. And yeah, my whole life changed.
Man, that's amazing. By the way, for everybody, you can't see Amy, only I could see her. Good for me. Amy's 53 and she looks amazing, just so you know. Like, you wouldn't know that she has gone through all this trauma. She's done all this work. She looks vibrant. She looks like she's floating. Seriously. I mean,
Damn.
you look amazing. Seriously. You
Thank
look
you.
incredible. And you've done a lot of work. And I was actually very excited when Amy contacted me to be on the show again. I was like, oh, I had a great time with Amy. I remember that. It was a lot of fun because you're a fun person.
I mean, that's where growth happens. That's where love happens. That's where connection happens.
I'm curious about your point of view of like kind of a larger thing of like we're seeing. So we talked a little bit about like your family members, conspiratorial thinking and stuff. Why do you think so many people are starting to tell this story about conspiracy or divisiveness? Like, why has this become such a larger thing that people are having a hard time getting unstuck from?
Um, well, I think in my own experience, it came from trauma.
Mm,
Um, and as I say, there's like when you have a trauma or you lose trust. I think people lose trust when you lose
yeah,
trust. Okay, so when you lose trust, that is like things start. You're looking for certainty
you're looking for certainty.
when
Yes.
you lose trust. So I think that is probably the biggest thing, is the trust factor. And many of that is, I think, trust of your relationship to this world, like trust with your relationship to this country. Like
Mm,
that is broken.
yeah.
That is broken. And yet trust really, only thing you can trust is that you can't trust really anything actually, but like you can't trust that you're actually going to wake up in the morning tomorrow.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't really know.
You don't really know, actually. Yeah.
So you have to have like this beautiful relationship with trust. Like you have to change your relationship with trust. And I think that is like, for me, I trusted everything until my fiance passed. And then everything was like, I don't trust even opening my mail. I don't
Yeah.
trust going outside of my house. That was broken. So
Yeah.
I had to find a new relationship with trust, with this world, with who I am and where I belong and how I can be of most service in this world.
Yeah. I think that was powerful. It's like the trust has been basically broken with, the world, the country, and that trauma throws people into this tailspin of wanting to have certainty. Somebody comes along, a group comes along and sells you certainty in something. This is how things are. This is what's happening. Yeah, that's right. I'm certain. This goes with you're just kind of floating till you get to a certainty zone.
Yes, which is why it's so powerful and damaging,
Yes.
because you're never truly certain. You're just your perception. It's always the way you see it, but
Yeah.
doesn't mean that it's right, wrong, or it actually happened that way. Like, like they say, there's a three sides to every story.
Yeah.
And, I think that trust, and I just want to say that our identity is not, is, we say, oh, our identity is built on culture, on politics. That's not who you are.
No.
We are too attached to those things.
Yeah.
And that's really killing. Like your identity is not you are not that's not your identity, being a Republican or being a Democrat. That is not who you are. Those are things outside of you. I just want to make that clear. Like,
I totally jive with that. It's like, that is not like you. That's not you. Why are you composing everything in your life around this thing? Like,
I don't understand it, because I don't belong to anybody, honey. I'm like, I am my own, and I get to change my mind. I get to have an opinion. I get to be different tomorrow. Like, the person you see me today is not who I'm going to be tomorrow.
yeah.
And I am not going to allow you to put me in that trap.
Right.
You're not allowed to do that to me.
Yeah. Actually, I've said that to a lot of people who, like, may say, like, let's say a political thing. Well, you're probably a Democrat. I'm like, whoa. I'm like, first of all, that's not who I am.
That's right.
That's some affiliation about something. But is that who I am? No. Let's talk about who we actually are for that. If you're not describing yourself like the actual you, if you're, listen, if you can say, hey, who am I? I'm a dirtbag. I'm an asshole. I'm mean to people. Okay, now we're getting down to it. I'm open-minded with people. I care about people. Okay, these are more like traits about you that are more you. But some affiliation with a party, or that you are this type of food eater, that's not you. That's actually not you. That's something you do. It's not you.
Yeah, and I think that's scary for people. Like, who am I?
Right, because the certainty is gone when you take that. The certainty is gone when you take that away. Well, who am I then? Well, it can't be about an affiliate. Let's get to the root of this.
But I encourage your listeners to really think of that as an opportunity.
Yeah.
Because, as I say, it's like people don't like it, but when you become more of who you are and like okay with that, and just like I'm just going to let things lie the way they are right now.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to put myself into a place that I'm going to feel bad about, because I'm a Scorpio, but I could be sharp.
Yeah.
I choose not to. But that's who I used to be.
Yeah.
So I can get down and dirty too. But the problem with that is that it hurts me and it hurts the other people.
Yeah.
And it doesn't bring anything to fruition.
Yeah.
There's no growth. There's nothing. There's only division.
Yeah. I'm taking away from this, especially the certainty aspect, which I think is very powerful. Humans crave certainty. Want to know that this is going to happen today. You're going to get this job. You're going to meet this person. You don't know.
You don't know. And the quicker you kind of come to that realization, the more open and things will start coming in.
Yeah.
Right? Because certainty will keep you hostage, and it'll keep your loved ones hostage also. So I would that's a big one. And sometimes you're thought to be, somehow weak. But I'm not weak. I'm just not certain. I'm not certain about, like, for sure. Okay.
I'm not sure.
For sure, but I'm open to possibilities that might be different.
Yes. Yep. I think it's just it's a needed conversation in today's world. It's like, listen, I'm like, well, you got to practice how to show up. I like to summarize stuff with people.
Okay,
okay, because it's easy to get going and just be like, what are we talking about? I'm like, you got to practice, people, how you want to show up. When you wake up in the morning and you know you have a bunch of meetings with people or you have nothing, how do you want to show up? How do you want to be? How do you want to exist in that moment with a person? Whether it's a person who's like, oh, this is a great, easy thing, or it's like, oh, this could be contentious. Like, well, you can control how you show up in that environment. And trust and certainty are almost these things is pendulum. It's like you lose trust, you crave the certainty. You know, no certainty, where do I trust? Like it's this
Okay,
thing,
yeah.
you know?
Yes, and I just also, I it works. Like I used to warrior up. I call it, I'm gonna warrior up. So I go on these dates. I used to have to, not anymore, but because I wasn't there yet. I did, I needed to warrior up before I went on these dates. Who do I want to be? I'm going to be open. What does that look like? What does that feel like? I want to be curious. What does that look like?
Yeah.
And I do an exercise where you embody who you want to be. You start embodying those things with visualization. I warriored up and I walk in that restaurant like, shoo.
It's Amy.
Yeah, hello. And they say, you're like a breath of fresh air. I'm like, freaking worried up for this thing.
I practice for this.
Practice.
Yeah.
And it's important that you give yourself that time before you enter to really embody those things so that you can walk in and be your best self.
It's one of the greatest things I learned in doing that. What I used to teach a lot of my staff back in the day when I ran this club, and people would show up like a couple minutes before their session with a client or something. And I say, you know what you're doing? You're just rushing the experience. You're showing up in a frazzled state. You're not you when you start that experience. But if you show up 15, 20 minutes early, you can practice being the person you want to be in that session. You can start creating that feeling of like how you want to come across. But if you just show up and you're just like, I just wing it all the time and stuff. I know a lot of people wing stuff. It doesn't go well normally. But then they tell the story, I'm so good under pressure to wing stuff. I'm like, okay. Maybe every once in a while. But you know what? People see through this story you're trying to convey in a rush job that you're doing, Like,
yeah,
you need to practice. You don't get good at something just by going, whatever, I just show up to it,
Well, and that's where being an athlete, being an artist,
Yep.
All these things where you have to practice. This is where we as people of influence and leaders, we're good at that usually because we're used to it. I've spent over 40 years in a dance studio.
Right.
Like practicing, dancing, teaching, like that is like how I show up for everything. I know, I have to make sure that I'm prepared and make sure that I, go through this and this and this so I can get that.
Right.
Because, I spent years perfecting and mastering something.
Yes. And so you have to do that for yourself. Like I was a collegiate track and field athlete, and I mean, you practice way more than you perform in a lot of things, in dancing, I'm sure. I mean, you're practicing so much more than the actual performance, the time for it. And you spend every day, and often it's unglamorous, it's monotonous, it is just repetition. So why do you have to do that for that, but you don't do that for yourself and how you show up? You have to practice to be the person you want to be. Like, there's no way around it. There's no pill for it. There's no thing you can do. The overnight success, it doesn't exist. It's a terrible story people tell other people.
Terrible. And when people, can you just give me some tips and tricks? I'm like,
give me some tips.
This is a journey. This is like a no joke journey. It's a beautiful journey because the more you do it, the freer you are.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't believe the pain is in the healing. I believe the pain is being stuck. I believe that is where the pain lives.
Interesting, man. It's good stuff. Amy, always a breath of fresh air.
Thank you.
Being real. Thanks for being on. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. It's nice spending time with you and your audience. And yeah.
Oh, we had like 90 something people listening to this. So
Awesome.
that
That's
heard
awesome.
Amy speak and say some pretty cool stuff and pretty honest too. So
Yeah, I'm the first one to tell you all my stuff.
of course, of course. Well, Amy, thank you so much. And I look forward to getting this out there on the back end and sharing it with more people. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Dr. Darian. Everyone out there, go have a beautiful rest of your day.